Today is the launch of the Mzansi Exchange pilot, which is being described as a pioneering initiative led by National Treasury. It's aimed at demonstrating how citizen-centered data exchange can enable evidence-based policy-making and real-time data verification between departments. This can also enable improved service delivery, we're told, and responsible digital governance in South Africa. The initiative forms part of My Mzansi, which is South Africa's roadmap for digital transformation. Our reporter Katlego Lehodi is on this story, and he joins us now live from Sandton, where this launch is going to take place. And Katlego, why is this important for the ordinary South African?
A very good morning to you, Ayanda, and to our viewers at home. Actually, we're coming to you live this morning from day 2 of the Mining Indaba, Joburg Mining Indaba here in Sandton. I'm not sure if you can see behind us, but the minister just arrived a moment ago, Minister Gwede Mantashe, who really just delivered a keynote address here on the final day of this particular Indaba. This coming through at a time, Ayanda, when all of these industries are taking stock in terms of where they find themselves. Remember that the mining industry contributes about 6% to the country's economy, and the exports as well in their numbers going out of the country. And we see those that are part of the mining industry just gathering for 2 days in Inanda, Sandton, to really form part of this. This particular Indaba here, Ayanda, coming through under the theme, experiencing and realizing the true potential of the mining industry. And this is where we'll see them really taking stock of where we find ourselves to date. There's also an amendment that is underway of the Mining Act that will come under the spotlight, but a lot of people just looking at how then the sector has been faring in helping the economy and in the creation of jobs, as we've seen a lot of retrenchments as well coming through from the mining sector. But I'm going to bring into the conversation right now Mr. Griffiths, who'll just reflect with us on day 2 of this Indaba here. The minister arriving to a fanfare. A lot of the guests here or delegates really looking forward to engaging with him in getting a sense of the potential, realizing the true potential of the mining industry. Welcome to the SABC. Let's reflect on the importance really of this Indaba and Minister Mantashe being here today.
Great, thank you very much. I first think on the first day there were 2 particular themes I think that came out for me. One is clearly with a gold price at $4,000, the PGM, so platinum, palladium, rhodium, all the prices increasing. So that, inevitably was going to create a much more positive vibe, I guess, at the Mining Indaba. So that was great to see a much improved sort of vibe around the mining industry in South Africa. But at the same time, I think the Mining Indaba, the Joburg Mining Indaba, is synonymous with frank conversations where we can address the real issues. And I think the real issues, that was the second theme that was being addressed, is, okay, so what's holding growth of the mining industry in South Africa back? And yesterday there were some frank conversations, of course, around Transnet and the amount of rail volumes that continue to drop, although we have seen some positive turnarounds, and today we're going to be hearing both from Eskom and Transnet. The second thing, of course, Eskom and the great concerns that we're seeing around many of the ferrochrome and of the ferromanganese smelters getting shut down. As you mentioned, lots of job losses. And they're trying to find out, well, what's the best way to resurrect those industries. But at the same time, you mentioned the changes to the mining regulations and the acts in South Africa. And there was a lot of reflection about, why we think that the current changes are not going to bring about the kind of growth in the industry that's required, in particular around exploration. So whilst the existing businesses in the mining industry in South Africa are doing really, really well, the concern is, so where's the next generation of mining coming from? And if we're not doing the exploration that's required, after a period of time, the existing mines run out and there's nothing new to replace that. So I think a mixed bag of really positive vibes from the existing miners, gold, PGMs, iron ore seems to be doing very well. Today, lots of conversations happening around coal, so and also in a very positive way. But South Africa does have challenges around Transnet, around Eskom, around the mining regulations, and what the policy certainty is that is required to get people to reinvest in mining, to reinvest in exploration. Those are the kind of candid conversations that are happening, I think, in a very positive light. And the fact that the minister's here, you mentioned, I think is very positive, so that the industry can engage with government in saying, what is it that we need to do together to be able to build this fantastic industry of ours.
Yeah, and Chris, also the talk centered around beneficiation. As we explore and we want to see the policy being, released to ensure that there's greater exploration, you hear a lot of people here talking about beneficiation, the pit to pot, that should be, a last resort of some sort. We need to get the best out of these minerals, especially when you hear the buzzword being around the critical minerals going into the future.
Yeah, and I think, again, that was the sort of very candid conversations, because in some industries, like the PGM industry, we are frankly from pit all the way to pot. So we beneficiate right through the value chain. And other industries, we do the same. In other industries, the notion that you can be fully beneficiated. For example, when we don't have power, so we are shutting down some of the beneficiation that we already have in this country because there's no cost-effective supply of power to those industries. So I think there's a candid conversation to say, number one, not all countries can be all things to all men. So you can't, in all of the commodities that we produce, be cost-competitive beneficiators. So, in what industries do we have that potential? And I think we've got to explore those. Others where we are shutting down existing beneficiation, what can we do to bring that back before we can think about beneficiating further? And then, frankly, what are the areas that we just not going to be cost competitive, and then say and acknowledge that, to say that's not an industry that we should chase, but we should chase rather those industries. And I think those are the conversations around beneficiation that are taking place.
And just before I let you go, Chris, we see a lot of candid talk as well around the responsibilities of these mines where their communities are concerned. Concerns raised around Anglo-American and the fact that it's now divesting, and a lot of people worried, civil society, the public here, worried about the jobs and the responsibilities of these mines in terms of developing these communities where they exist. I guess this is something that really remains somewhat of a bottleneck, a thorny issue where these talks are concerned here.
Yeah, I think the CEO of Anglo-American, Duncan Wanblad, yesterday was at pains to explain that, number one, Anglo-American are not leaving South Africa, and the divestiture of Valterra, Anglo-American Platinum, is not a net loss to South Africa. And Anglo-American remains invested in Kumba, in the manganese, and they are also looking at reinvesting in some new potential if we can get the attractiveness of exploration back in. So I think Anglo, as a great company, as a great legacy company in South Africa, were at pains to explain that they're not leaving South Africa and that South Africa still remains a very important part of their business. But I think we've also got to acknowledge that if we want these great companies both to be here and to remain here, we've got to make it attractive for those companies not only to be here and mine, but also to grow and to reinvest in exploration and the future mining companies that perhaps are not yet here. So that's, I think, something that we as a mining industry and as a mining regulator need to ask ourselves candidly, what is it that is actually holding back the growth of mining in South Africa, and to collectively tackle those issues, because this is such a wonderful industry with such huge growth potential that we shouldn't ignore that. But at the same time, let's just be candid that there are issues that are holding that back, and what are we going to do to address those issues? And some of those I've already mentioned: the regulatory certainty, the policies that are holding back exploration in South Africa. Some of the challenges around Transnet, Eskom, crime and corruption in South Africa, big issue holding back investment. But there's so many positive things to build on that I think that we should look at those and then say, how can we use those positives to tackle some of the challenges that we have.
Chris, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. Chris Griffiths coming through, joining us this morning as the outgoing CEO of Vedanta Limited, and you hear him just reflecting with us on day one there are a lot of expectations on day 2. As you can imagine that this is coming through at a G20 presidency year for South Africa. But a lot of people is actually also looking at the geopolitics, Ayanda, the issue of illegal mining also coming out strongly from yesterday. And a lot of these people looking for solving really for the country's mining industry. That hence will see the country's economy also benefiting from that. Ayanda, back to you in studio for now.
All right, Katlego, thanks very much indeed. Katlego, actually at the 13th annual Joburg Indaba. It's of course taking place today at the Inanda Club in Sandton. The gathering is seen as a platform for critical and constructive conversations about the future of mining in the country. In fact, we're expecting Minister Gwede Mantashe to address that summit, and he's likely to speak, as you heard there from Katlego's guest, about the criticism surrounding mining legislation amendments and challenges that are facing the sector. So we'll certainly keep up with you, Katlego, throughout the course of the day.